there's a lot of schools where there's more than what meets the eye. I tell people all the time that, I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in Oregon, and I had no idea where Niagara Falls was even on the map when I was a kid. And I think, I don't think anybody grows up dreaming of attending a school like Niagara, but I think that the one thing that we find is that the kids that actually look at schools for the right reasons and make decisions for the right reasons will find things they like in schools like Niagara, right? It's not just us, but there's a lot the more that meets the eye in terms of how the program is run, what culture is set, what it's like to be on the team, what it's like to be a student here, et cetera, all those kind of things. And then because from my perspective, we've never had, like, we have kids come and go all the time. I'm not saying that, but I've probably, in my 18 years at this school as a head and assistant coach, probably had maybe 2 or 3 kids just flat out leave because they didn't like it, didn't like the school, didn't like the area. Once they come here and they get involved in it, typically really, really enjoy the experience.
Well, that is a great way to start our Coach's Corner discussion today. And I want to welcome Coach Rob McCoy, who is the head coach at Niagara University, part of the MAC, the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. And this is someone who I've been following from afar with regard to social media and Twitter. And I really was anxious to get Rob on for the exact reasons that he just alluded to with regard to, I'm familiar with Niagara Falls. I'm from the Northeast, but I've always had kind of a curiosity as far as the student athletes or the students that find their way to a school such as Niagara University. And upon a deeper dive into your roster, Rob, first of all, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And, when I'm looking at your roster, I was kind of caught off guard because I started to see Seattle and San Diego and, I expected to see some Canadian student athletes and some student athletes from the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, but that kind of caught me off guard. So let's start there and let's talk a little bit about your roster compilation. How do you choose your student athletes? Is it high school driven? Is it JUCO driven? Is it a combination of the portal and high school athletes? How do you go about as a staff putting together the roster at Niagara?
Yeah, our first priority is to win the area with high school kids. That would be our first order of business, and then we want to do really well in Canada with high school athletes. We've got players made up. We've got a roster made up of Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan. So that's that would be our main area. And then, we just try to backfill with the best players we can find. And, with the transfer portal being the way it is, and then junior college baseball being the way it is, there's talented players everywhere. So really, if I'm being honest, I think our players recruit as well for us as we do for ourselves. So in terms of finding players, they'll go off into summer baseball and, they'll have somebody looking in the portal and they said, hey, you should contact our coach, et cetera. And then we find out about players that way, or just kind of using our resources the best we can. We run the program with just 2 of us. It's me and Coach Matt Spadafora, who's born and raised in Canada. He played at Texarkana before they shut down, and then Arkansas Little Rock. And so the 2 of us run it basically and use the resources the best we can to try to find the best players we can to fit our needs. So we're really just trying to fill like a profile of a player that, both physically, mentally, and maturity wise that we know will fit here.
So let's talk a little bit about campus. When you hear Niagara University, obviously Niagara Falls, You're talking upper New York Canadian border. Talk about the campus. What's the size of the campus? What's it like to be a student at Niagara University?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're about 25 minutes north of Buffalo on the Niagara River and about 3 miles from Niagara Falls. The population is about 3,500 undergrad students and about 500 grads. It's big enough to where you see a new face every day, but it's small enough to where you get recognized and know that you're kind of in a tight knit community type of deal. Most of the families congregate in a little town called Lewiston, which is your classic quaint northeast town, which is a couple miles from Niagara Falls. And then you have obviously the falls. You have Canada. You cross the border. We're right by the border. And then Buffalo. You've got I tell kids you've got the Sabres, the Bills. You've got the Bisons, which is Toronto's AAA team. It's a good area. You're 4 hours north of Pittsburgh, 3.5 of Cleveland, an hour and a half from Toronto, about 4 hours from Detroit if you go through Canada. But yeah, it's kind of a slower type feel. It's not a fast moving place. We're kind of set in what I would consider the suburbs. So you can get to the fast moving stuff, if you want to, but it's kind of small, safe environment set off here on the Niagara frontier.
Well, I really, I'm familiar with the MAC. I'm obviously from the Northeast, and, I see schools like Fairfield and Quinnipiac, et cetera. Talk to me a little bit about your early schedule with regard to whether you go south. I noticed you played, I think it was George Mason, Norfolk. So I'm assuming you were in the Northern Virginia, Carolina areas. Well, talk a little bit about your schedule when you put it together. Obviously, those first few weeks of the season, you're in warmer climates, and then ultimately you're dealing with the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, schedule. But what's your Southern schedule look like?
Yeah, we typically have the first, based on our current MAC schedule. Now we just added Merrimack and Sacred Heart, so that'll change a little bit. But yeah, we typically have 5 non-conference weekends, and to start, and all of those weekends will be on the road. We try to get as far south as we can get and still have it be relatively nice. That's a challenge. It's cold everywhere in February.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you go, unless you're in Florida, California, Texas, Louisiana. It's going to be chilly. So, yeah, we've opened up in my time here, we've opened up at Florida State. We opened up one year. We opened up at Norfolk State last year. We've opened up at Vanderbilt. We've opened up at Baylor. One year we flew out to Baylor to open up. So, yeah, I try to, my whole idea is just to try to get kids the best experiences they can get from a travel perspective. We do charter, we charter buses up till about, 11 or 12 hours. And then we'll find a team we can fly to if we can't find anything like that. But we've tried to run the gamut and just keep the most interesting type of schedule we can, albeit competitive, experience type things, preparation for our conference play when we get back.
So one of the questions that a lot of parents are always asking me to convey or ask college coaches is, when they're evaluating a student athlete, when do metrics begin to play a role? If you're out recruiting, are you looking at, radar guns for pitchers? Are you looking at, home to first, foot speed? Is it skill sets? What draws you as a staff, you and Matt, to a student athlete that you feel would become a fit at Niagara?
Yeah, I think, first of all, that's different. The best answer for that is it's different for everybody. And I think every head coach and every recruiting coordinator has their specific things they like to work with. It could run the gamut. I think the best thing that we have going for us is that me and my recruiting coordinator basically see eye to eye on just about everybody. So that helps. We tend to look for metrics first, maybe.
Okay.
Like we're trying to get a minimum. I would stop short of saying that we have an equation for what we're looking for, but basically it's like a sliding scale. The better you are at something, the worse you can be at another. And so
Right.
so we're evaluating sort of on that sliding scale with, hey, we can give a little on the foot speed if the kid's got a little more juice in the bat, and vice versa. Some of our position specific, they're non-negotiables, like arm strength from a shortstop, range. I think some programs will take it offensive first shortstop. Some programs will take it defensive first shortstop. And then, I say all that, but the reality of it is there's a level of maturity that a kid needs to have. There's a level of competitiveness that a kid needs to have. And I think that the longer I do this, the more I realize that those things are the difference between winning and losing. And so you can't give up. You can't give on those. So, in terms of the tools and the metrics, those are great. But if the kid can't compete when the lights flip on, there's really nothing we can do. I mean, there wouldn't be anybody disagree with the fact that velo is important when you're a pitcher. But velocity out of the strike zone is a guy that's in the pen for life. There's really nothing you can do. And I wish it wasn't like that. I wish every kid that threw hard could throw strikes. And I wish every kid that threw strikes could throw hard, but the reality of it is not like that. So you're trying to find that perfect fit.
So, Rob, I'm sure you've been asked this next question a million times. I'm going to try to phrase it properly. We get asked, when I say we, collectively between the baseball blue book and my son Tyler and I, when we're talking to parents, the high school athlete versus the transfer portal athlete. And I always allow parents to understand from high school to college, the physicality, the speed of the game, and the intensity of all of these games are the difference. It's a massive jump from high school to college. But with regard to your recruiting, as of today, as we're sitting here and talking today, what is the role of the high school student athlete versus the transfer portal student athlete when it comes to your current now recruiting process?
Yeah. I think a lot of people would say that it's the fact that you can't take a flyer on high school players anymore. You have to have almost a ready-made player. So, before we would have a class of 10 and you would take 2 or 3 blue chippers, or this is what you would try to do. You try to get 2 or 3 blue chippers. You try to get, 4 guys in the middle where you were pretty certain they were going to pan out, that they were going to play early. And then you take 2 or 3 guys that you just wanted to just dream on, thinking all of them were going to be good players at some point for you. I don't think you can dream on anybody anymore because you don't have to. You could go address a need in the portal and junior college with guys that, that can do things that basically have already experienced that jump. I tell high school, you're taking the biggest jump that you've taken up to this point in your career from high school to college. So, and many times they're not prepared for it. You'll see the high school shortstop in the fall field a ground ball and take 3 shuffles and the guy beats it out, and you're like, you just have to the game is faster. You don't have all day to make those plays anymore. And so I think that's what you just can't dream on players and for me, that's tough because I really love, like, some of our best players. Greg Cullen was a 15th rounder. Matt Brash was a 4th rounder. He's in the big leagues for the Mariners. Like, we dreamed on those guys. We were like, yeah, we see it in there. We just have to get bigger, faster, stronger. They got to play. And now it's tough because you're left with, do I dream on this high school guy that I'm pretty sure will work out, or do I go get this transfer that I know is going to be able to do some of what I expect that to be out of that position?
Well, at the end of the day, and I think you absolutely answered that question in such an honest, candid, in real manner. In other words, that is the reality. That is the I don't like to say it's the business of the sport of college baseball. But you use the word, and I use this word an awful lot when I'm speaking with prospective student athletes, physicality.
Mhm.
In today's world of tournaments and showcases and high school seasons that lead to travel seasons that lead to fall seasons, and then winter tournaments, January 15th in Arizona, the time in the weight room is minimized. And so therefore you cannot gain that physical, those strengths that a college coach is looking at. Just talk to the pure speed of the game and the physicality of the game at the college level, and put it in perspective for parents to truly understand.
I mean, it's really tough to kind of wrap my head around it sometimes. So, I went to a really small high school. It really didn't click there. I played junior college baseball. I played NAIA baseball, and I started coaching at the Division I level. And I got to tell you, especially since COVID happened, so a lot of things that don't get recognized, I don't think, from the outside sometimes. The biggest one is that we used to have like 3 years ago, we had a 40-round draft.
Right.
And then in 1 year we had a 5-round draft. And then 2 years after that, we'd had a 20-round draft. So there's 75 rounds of players that should be in pro ball that are in college baseball right now, that used to be in professional baseball. And so the level of all college baseball, not just Division I, is so much higher. And so I think sometimes parents and kids now they're getting confused that, well, they said, well, I know so-and-so was kind of undersized and under this, and they made it and they got a chance. And so that's me. I mean, that might've been 4 years ago, but 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But now you're to the point where, I mean, I'm looking at the team that I have now, and my goal is for that to translate and for us to have a championship season. But this is the biggest team I've had by far. The physicalness of these guys is outrageous, and it's they're bigger, stronger, faster than they've ever been, and it's trickling down from pro ball. Guys that would normally be scuffling on a rookie ball field are playing for Vanderbilt, Florida, Georgia, and that's trickling down. And so every single level of college baseball and so if we're recruiting the same type of player we recruited 4 years ago, we're making a huge mistake.
See, I think it's important to kind of expand on that point, because a lot of parents and student athletes think portal means Division I, cannibalizing Division I. In reality, as you just really, I think, explained it to a T, it affects all of college baseball, NAIA, JUCO, because those guys that are getting bounced, this week or next week, or asked to, they don't have a roster spot, are going to begin to go into the portal. They're looking for a new home, whether that's Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA. So this affects all of college baseball, not just Division I. Would you agree with that?
Every level. I mean, we've got a national championship or national level, like knocking on the door of a championship junior college in Niagara Community College right next door. And they've got so much talent at Erie Community College. These are Division III junior college programs that are getting, like guys that transferred back home. Maybe they went D1, maybe they went D2. They transfer back home to play junior college and develop. Every single level is getting better because it's trickling down. And in a matter of, I think in 5 years, you're not even going to recognize the college game anymore. And think about, what the interesting thing is, and I'm a huge college baseball fan, but last year's World Series is arguably hands down the best college World Series we've ever seen.
Agree.
And think about that was the year, Dylan Cruz's year was the year that those kids should have been drafted in 2020.
Correct.
So they went to college because they really didn't have a choice. Some of them didn't get the deals they wanted, and some of them got squeezed out. But all of those kids went to college and That's why that tournament last year, those guys would have been in pro ball out of high school. And it was just a phenomenal World Series because of the amount of talent where you're just looking at and you're like, how are these guys in college baseball right now?
I mean, you look at those rosters, in Division I baseball, and as you just so profoundly, absolutely nailed this. When I'm talking with parents, I try to get them to, in fact, I have a book called The Shift, and I tell people the shift wasn't COVID. The shift was Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
When they cut 42 rookie league teams and short season teams, and they took a draft of 1,500 to down to 650, 700, there's a boatload of talent that's saying, okay, there's no room in professional ball. I have to go to college. That's one point. The other point is Major League Baseball has essentially said to college baseball, hey, we want you to develop these athletes. We want you to deal with those years of 18 to 22 or 23. And then if they're ready, they can come to the draft. Okay. So talk about that more a little bit, because you as a college coach, you're handling better talent, but you're really developing, future pros, future potential draft picks. And it makes not only Niagara, but all of the MAC, all of Division I in the Northeast. I mean, look at Fairfield, UConn, Boston College, Central Connecticut, Northeastern. These schools are all going to the regionals. In Northeastern's case, they're doing it as an at-large team, but that would have never happened 4 or 5 years ago. And so, Niagara, Quinnipiac, you're only players away from being one of those at-large teams. What year was it with Fairfield when some ridiculous start, like 28?
Yeah, 2020, spring of 21. Yeah.
So, I mean, in your conference, you're playing, these top flight teams. And so, but it can happen this year. Your team could be stacked to the point where all of a sudden you rip off a 650 winning percentage and you have the right RPI and you're looking at a potential at-large bid. Is that something that's possible at a MAC program?
Yeah, I think it's possible with the right, with the pieces falling together. Like, I don't think we can do it staying status quo. I think you have to reach a little bit. And I think, you have to embrace the portal. You have to embrace getting guys that have experience that maybe were a little bit over their head at a Power 5 level, so to speak, or maybe just wasn't the right fit, from a personality standpoint. I've got a couple, let's say, I think I have 3 Power 5 transfers on the team right now. And, it's just a different, for better or worse, it's just a different kind of mindset. There's a little more loyalty. Loyalty's not the right word, because those guys are loyal. It's just a matter of like, listen, I need you to succeed, man. I can't replace you if you have a bad day. So, but yeah, I think, the development is kind of interesting. I think it was maybe 10 years ago at the convention or something. Boris was making a plea for, or maybe, I don't know if he was making a plea or if he was kind of anticipating the fact that baseball was going to move more towards the football basketball model, and that Major League Baseball, if they had their choice, it would be much cheaper to fully fund college baseball teams at 25 scholarships for all Division I teams, and then start kids at AA. So you wouldn't have rookie ball, you wouldn't have A ball. You basically be more sure about the maturity of a kid that you took because they went to college. And the thing about college and maturing kids is, the honest truth is, because they're in school, they have to do something they probably don't want to do. And right. So they have to balance the workload of baseball, and they have to balance school. And some of them love it, and they're all going to get degrees, and it's all going to be beneficial. But then you sort of take that away, and then they just get to focus all that time they took on school, they get to focus on baseball. And it sort of makes it seem a little bit more palatable from that perspective. And so I think it's a great thing for college baseball to develop players. The only thing I don't like is that, they don't get to take the flyer on the 39th round kid. And, we had 6 guys drafted in 4 years and 5 years. And we were lucky that we had a 40-round draft for those guys. But the reality of it is that you're still getting those guys, and you've still got a chance. They just have to be more accurate. Scout told me last year we had a guy that was pretty close, pretty fringe guy, really, really good arm. And he's like, if I can't look at him and put him in AA on a AA team, then he really got no chance. And that's when it kind of sobered up for me a little bit, where I was like, man, this is going to be a challenge, but I think if you're up for it, it'll be worth it.
Well, I think the best thing that college baseball does provide for student athletes is that maturation to understand reality with regard to dreams. In other words, most of the kids that say 15 to 19, whatever that high school age may be, they automatically assume that rite of passage to go from high school to college. But not only is it a massive leap, but it's a process that we all, many of them try to rush through. They think like, okay, I want to run faster. I want to get bigger. Well, there's a mother nature component to this thing. There's not a magic pill you take when you graduate from the stage of high school and walk onto the campus at college. Getting the difference between 180 and 205 is a big deal, but a lot of that is days in the weight room, your sleep schedule, et cetera. So, this is what's fascinating to me, because people think baseball, and while Niagara may not be at the top of that list, you just said, hey, listen, we've had guys drafted for over the last 5 years. One guy's in the show, and he's with Seattle. I think a lot of parents, I just want you to touch on this briefly. I think a lot of parents and student athletes associate big leaguers with SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12. It's not necessarily the case. You look around, you see MAC, you see Division III, you see JUCO. There's a lot of college athletes that have gone to various colleges throughout the country, northern schools, Midwestern schools, and they ultimately reach the big league. But it has to do with talent, work ethic, coachability, and development. So can you just touch on that? It's not where you go, it's how you prepare in order to be ready for the potential of a pro opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's all need-based, to be honest with you, like fit. When you're talking about some of the guys that we've had go in the draft, they needed to play. They needed to get stronger. They needed to know that they could fail and still have a chance to get better. They weren't going to be, casted off and benched. They could fail forward. And so they needed to get bigger and stronger and all that kind of stuff. And, like schools like us have to be more aggressive in the weight room. And some people say, well, that's too much lifting. And the response to that is you don't have a choice. If you don't do it, you're not making it. Right. And if you do it, you might get hurt. You might be too sore. You might have negative impact. But the consequences of not doing it far outweigh the consequences of trying it. So it is a mindset, and there's good players everywhere. I say that I've always told people, listen, I've seen the gamut of college baseball. Like I played junior college. I played NAI. We played D3. We played against D2 teams. I've seen the powerhouse D2 teams, all the levels of D1. We've played, like I said, we've played Florida State and Vanderbilt. We played Oregon. We played everybody. And to me, the biggest thing I see is what people miss, because they just say, well, this team could beat that team or whatever. Every team has really good players. The higher you go, the more good players they have. That's really what it is. Like every team, like there's teams out there that have 5 guys that could play for us. We get 5 guys that could play for somebody else. Like it's just a matter of having, an abundance of these players. That's really what it comes down to. And so anybody that comes in, and we tell guys this all the time, anybody that comes in and has the determination and the will to succeed and wants to follow a plan and understands that it's a process, it's a 4-year, sometimes 3-year, 4-year process, and that it's achievable if they put their mind to it and their actions align with their thoughts and their goals, then they can make it.
Well, I think you have absolutely touched on so many key, I might even term it critical points that parents need to understand during this transition or shift within the college base. It's, and I tell parents and student athletes all the time, it's not a matter of whether you like it or don't like it. It's here to stay. So you either figure it out and work within, or you are going to get left in the dust, because these rules are not changing at Major League Baseball. They're not changing at the NCAA level. Do you foresee, I'm going to squeeze this in, do you foresee any changes in Division I baseball with like a mega conference or conferences, and then kind of like college football, the bowl series versus the playoff type teams?
Oh yeah, you're putting me on the spot on this one, huh?
Yeah. Do you think it would ever come to fruition?
I do. Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
I think it's around the corner. I hope, my hope is that that schools like Niagara and the MAC are included in those games still, like the 1AA and 1A,
right,
occasional game. But I have very little doubt that at some point, and let me be honest. The reality is that any true fan of college baseball. So there's going to be things. I've voted for things. We get those questionnaires all the time from the ABCA. I've literally voted things that are pro college baseball, that are counter Niagara University, because I'm a fan of college baseball, and our game is the best it's ever been, and it's going to skyrocket in the next 5 years.
I agree.
And one of the things that's going to make it skyrocket is that, truth be told, nobody's going to, nobody's going to limit what Alabama baseball can spend, and nobody's going to limit what Vanderbilt can spend. And when there's 307 Division I baseball teams, there's 200 of those teams are in the Northeast,
right?
And 100 of them are, and they're frankly making decisions for the 100 that are spending money, and it's going to cause some issues. Like if you have let me think off the top of my head. If you have those West Coast teams, I really worry about them, because what's Cal State Fullerton going to do without a football? You know what I mean? And so the original thought was that they were just going to make you choose, like, hey, are you going to be a powerhouse team or not? And are you going to fund it or not? But then you have schools like Georgetown basketball, where their football is not going to take them places, but their basketball is.
Right.
So they have a lot of things to work out, and they have to decide if it's going to be a university-wide decision, or if it's going to be a sport-specific decision, or what they're going to decide, how they're going to decide to do that. But at the end of the day, in order for our sport to grow to its highest level, we've got to let it grow, and that's going to create differences. That's going to create another level, because there's a lot of teams that are really good at our level that aren't going to fund it to the level that they want to go.
Correct.
And that's just the reality of it.
And I think that is such an amazing discussion point. And I think it's obviously going to go from simmer to boil here over the next 12 months. But as I tell a lot of people, if you take the Mississippi River and you go to the left of the Mississippi, not a lot of college baseball as compared to the east of the Mississippi, where the vast majority of programs north to south, and one only has to take a look at the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC grabbing, Stanford and Cal, and the Big Ten grabbing UCLA, USC, and Arizona, Oregon. I mean, they're coming east. You don't see guys going west. So it is an interesting topic, and I thank you for sharing your thoughts such in an honest capacity. Coach Rob, I want to know, how do you want parents and student athletes to contact you? We're going to provide down below in the link below Coach's email address, his social media handle, but how do you like to be contacted?
Yeah.
Is it video? Do you want a video in there?
Oh, yeah.
What would you like?
Yeah. It's got to be, it could be a DM or an email, but it's got to include video. That's got to get you in the door. Right. You can, because at the end of the day, I could get an email from the president telling me certain things, but until you see it, you're really
Right.
you have to see it.
Right.
And I want to say, like, no offense to coaches out there. There's a lot of good coaches, trustworthy guys, but because video is just so possible nowadays, and especially video with a gun or clock or whatever, especially that, there's really no reason. You don't have to trust anybody anymore. And this is our livelihood. So we're gonna decide what we see, whether that's, what everyone, 10 people could think something. I've seen it. I've seen 10 people say no to a kid and somebody say yes, and the one person was right. So it's just a matter of what you can work with and what you can do it, and it doesn't always have to do with just flat out metrics or talent or whatever somebody says something. So.
Well, Rob, I want to say thank you. I'm going to look forward to meeting you in person in Dallas in January. I'm really excited about this year's ABCA convention. I want to say thank you to you for taking the time to join us today. If there's anything that we can ever do or help you in any capacity, please feel free to reach out. Parents, I really encourage you to click on the link below, find out a little bit about Niagra University. If you have any questions at all about today's discussion, please feel free to leave the comments down below. If you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and make sure you subscribe, and you can also send us questions to either Coach McCoy or myself, and anything relating to either college baseball or obviously Niagara University. Rob, thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving, sir.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.